What's up, Lowrider family? Welcome back to another episode on Lolos and More. Now today we're going to talk about wiring the trunks, wiring the setups. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I have gotten this question many times, and I figured, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and make a video for you guys to understand how to wire up the setups in the trunk. So from where I'm going to explain, for example, we're going to say that we've already wired the switches. We're going to say they're already wired, okay? And then we're going to go off from the wiring block in the trunk, and it's going to go spread out into the trunk. Because some people have told me, asking me questions, saying that they saw me wire up some dumps straight to the solenoids, which is not true. So this is why I'm making the video, so nobody gets confused. Because I know some of the videos I don't explain what I'm doing. On one video, I try to explain what I was doing, but I think this will help you guys a lot on how to wire up the trunks. Okay, so I got a few ideas right now. This would be a 6 battery setup. You know, some people want the 3 or 4 batteries on one side and the other 3 or 4 on the other side of the trunk, right? And then here we got another battery setup where people would run a full 8 next to each other, one full line right here. And we got this one right here that you can say most hoppers do, or street hoppers, or just people that want a lot of batteries in the trunk. They'll do this right here. They'll run 12 batteries, but they'll only run 8 to the front and 4 to the back. We'll get more into detail later. But as you guys can tell, all of these right here, okay, this right here, this little break means it's the quick disconnect. Okay, so this is what this little break in the line means. It's a quick disconnect. So this is your ground, pretty much, from for your batteries. So this means ground. This to me means quick disconnect. Just for this video, I don't know exactly what that means in an electrician point of view. So I'm just doing this just for the video. Okay. So we'll start with the batteries being off to one side of the trunk. Okay, to wire them up, maybe I should have done this before. So let's see. Okay, for example, okay, so we got 6 batteries, right? So what's recommended to run is 3 solenoids, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and just draw 3 solenoids right here, connect them, and let's say we're just gonna do 3 batteries to the back. Okay, so all right. Okay, let's see. So this is what's pretty much recommended. You know, 2 batteries, 1 solenoid per solenoid. So that's what's recommended. But I do tell you guys, if you guys are going to be abusing your setup, if you're going to be switch happy, run 1 extra solenoid just in case. That's what I do, and I've never had an issue. I have had some solenoid stick, but luckily, because I had 1 extra solenoid, it didn't screw up anything in the back. It didn't screw up any of the hydros. So yeah, that saved me. So we're gonna talk about hooking up the batteries and how they're hooked up. So this is the basic part. So your batteries are hooked up in series, okay? Since they are hooked up in series, meaning once you hook up one battery to the second battery, you go from 12 to 24. Series, you're cranking up the voltage. 56. So This is in volts. So once you hook up your batteries, you're hooking up in series, you're raising up the volts. So 6 batteries, 72 volts. Okay? So it doesn't matter what side your ground is on. If your ground is on this side, well then your voltage grows up this way. It doesn't have to be from left to right. Okay? It can be from right to left. Wherever you want your ground, okay? You can, for those that do ask, you can have your ground, your quick disconnect up front underneath your driver's seat. You can have your quick disconnect up there. In most instances, that is safer. So if you hear anything funny in your trunk, you can disconnect it right underneath your seat instead of running to the back of the trunk, popping it open, and then you're exposed to a bunch of sparks and flames and stuff. So whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with. Especially if you're comfortable with your wiring or someone else's wiring, depends what you want. Okay? So, on my example, I got the ground on my left side, just because. Once you got that, right on a negative terminal, you want to go ahead and connect your next battery, wire with wire, to positive to negative. Do it to the other side. And then from here, how I like to hide my wire, I'll go down and up. And then you go connect another wire right there, another wire right here. And then this last battery, for 6 batteries, I'll hook up a wire here. And then this wire will go to a pump. Yeah, we'll pretend that's a pump. It'll go to the pump. Okay. Now for wiring your rear solenoid, say we're only going to run the 3, right? So we'll run another wire off of this positive terminal right here. It doesn't matter. So just run it from right here. I don't know why I said that. It doesn't matter, but we'll run it from here, and then this goes off to the back pump. Okay? So there it is, right there. Now, if you're going to run 3 pumps on 6 batteries, you can do that. So let's go ahead, do another bank of solenoids. Alright. So, all the thing you got to do is add another wire. This is what I do, okay? To save wire and to have a cleaner looking setup, I'll usually just run a wire to the next bank of solenoids instead of having another wire come from here up to that other bank. So I'll just have that to here go off to a next pump. There we go. So now we got our 3 pump setup with 6 batteries with your 3 banks of solenoids. So that's that. That's on wiring that part with 6 batteries, 3 pumps. By jumping your wire, make sure that you're jumping off of the wire that came off of the battery. Okay, don't jump off the wire that goes to the pump to go to the next bank of solenoids. Make sure you're jumping it off from the wire from the batteries to your next one. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's what you want to do. So make sure you guys hook up your batteries in series. Okay. Alright. So now we go to the other common way of putting batteries in your trunk, you could say. So we'll go ahead, let's see, we'll call this just a 2 pump setup as well. So see, we got 8 batteries right here, so we'll go ahead and draw up 4 solenoids, and let's say we're only going to run like 2 batteries to the back. So we'll do that. Alright, got our quick disconnect on our first battery right here. Same deal. 24 right here. Let's see. This goes 84 and 96. So we got 96 volts right here. Okay, on this bank right here. So we got 8 batteries. All right. So we got 4 solenoids for the front pump. So we got a pump here. We'll just draw a big square. As you guys can tell, probably got bored already of trying to draw pumps. But alrighty then. So what we'll do, you got your ground on your negative on your first battery. Then you go ahead, hook them up to the other, zigzag to this side. Make sure you go from positive to negative, people. Don't go from positive to positive, or else you'll ruin something. You will ruin something. So here you go off to this bank of solenoids. Now, since I only have 2 right here, and I said I was going to run just 2 batteries to the rear pump, so we'll go off this battery, and there we go. All right. Like I was saying earlier, you can run multiple cables from a terminal. Okay, just make sure where you're running them to. But yeah. So that's what I'm doing right there. I'm just 2 batteries, 2 solenoids. I know I did say 1 solenoid per 2 batteries, but you always want to add just that 1 extra solenoid to the rear pump. That's it. It's pretty basic. Everybody's going to tell you that. If you're just going to run 2 batteries, then just run 2 solenoids. That's it. If you're going to run 3 batteries, you can go ahead and run your 2 solenoids still. So, you could run 2 solenoids up to 4 batteries, and then after that, if you're going to go 5 batteries, then go to your next solenoid. 3 solenoids. Alright, so this is the way of doing this bank of batteries for this type of setup. Front pump, rear pump, 2 batteries, and 8 batteries to the front. Hopefully this is making sense to everybody. Okay. Now we go to the different kind of setup. Alright. Okay, let's drop the voltages. And as you guys can tell, I'm going to stop right here. And it's going to restart. You guys see what it did? So in this setup, in this trunk setup, some people would do it this way. They'll have they'll either have two quick disconnects, or they'll do this. They'll either we'll pretend this doesn't exist. Say only they had 1. So we'll say this cable right here runs over to this negative terminal. Okay, so you can run separate banks of batteries on 1 quick disconnect. You can. Okay, so you can do it this way. If you don't want to have two quick disconnects, you can do it like this. All right. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Go ahead, hook up your wires. Here we go from here. We go to here, and we go to here, and it stops there. And now we go to our separate bank of batteries. Go here. Right, I'm not screwing up anything, right? Yeah. And then we go here. Time to draw those solenoids. So we got 8 batteries. Since we got 8 batteries, I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Let's say for this setup, they like to go a little crazy, so we'll add that 5th solenoid. Okay. 5 solenoids, 4 batteries for the back pump. Okay. So got your first bank of batteries here, up to 48 volts. You can run this wire right here. We'll say we'll run it underneath the batteries. It comes back up here to the solenoids, and it goes to your back pump. Okay. And we got our 8 bank battery. Instead of just having 4 solenoids, we're running 5. Because with this setup, people are going to want to get a little switch happy, right? So from that solenoid to the last one, you go to your front pump. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. I know some of you guys will probably look at other YouTube videos or look at pictures on Google. You'll see that battery cables are hooked up from here to there and this and that and zigzagged. So yeah, this is pretty much why you see that. You know, they're running separate banks of batteries. Instead of running 12 batteries to one pump, they're just going to keep 4 batteries to the rears and 8 fully to the front. The reason why they kind of do this is just so that if they're hitting the front switch, there's no other pump eating off of this bank of batteries right here. You know, and it, you know, it kind of helps, it kind of doesn't. It's kind of hard to explain for me. I'm not an electrician, but this is how the trunks are usually wired up. All right. So, yep. Hopefully it makes sense so far. Okay. So, I'm gonna go ahead real quick, clean this up. I'm gonna delete the numbers, clean it up. I'm gonna keep this same setup real quick, and we're gonna go over wiring your dumps. And so, remember, from this point on, we already got the switches wired, and we're coming down to the wiring block to the pumps. And from there, we're gonna explain how the wires are spread out to the trunk. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense to you guys. Remember, always run AccuMax solenoids. AccuMax. Don't use anything from AutoZone or O'Reilly's. Alright, be right back once I clean this up. Okay, what I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to go ahead and just erase all of this, and we're going to pretty much base it off of this type of setup right here, so I can blow it up all right here. And keep this in mind, this is going to be the same kind of wiring for any pump. Any pump. Yeah, pretty much any pump, hydraulic setup. Just keep that in mind. And then I'll go over some other things, some other questions that I have gotten before. Someone asked me about what if I want to go from 4 pumps to 3 pumps, or 3 pumps to 2 pumps. It's completely doable. Let me just erase all this, and we'll start fresh on doing the other type of wiring, since we already covered the battery wiring part of the setup. This is the easiest part to understand. I hope it's easy to understand. So we'll be right back. But one thing I did forget to say, this wire right here, right, it is to connect to the other side of batteries. So that's what you're doing, because it goes off from 24, 36, 48. So your voltage keeps growing. Okay, be right back. Okay, so we got a scenario here where we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we got 10 batteries. We got 10 batteries set up here. And then we got a 3 pump setup. The rear pumps have 1 dump, and the front pump has 2 dumps. So this is your usual, what you'll sometimes see with people that want to, you know, front, back, side to side and stuff like that. If you're gonna go with single dumps on each pump, you know, if you're gonna have 2 rear pumps and 1 front pump, then you just want 1 dump, then, you know, you'll knock off one side. You'll just use 1 dump. Okay, So these are, of course, you can guys tell are my dumps. One wire is ground. On dumps these days, it does not matter which cable, which wire that comes off of the dump is ground or power. So just make sure you have one ground and one power. On 8X dumps and another dump, it does matter which is ground and which is power. So on those, I recommend you get the plugs that they have accessories for. By the plugs, so I can easily determine for you guys to see which one's which. The older dumps, the self-grounding dumps, they don't have a ground because, like I said, they're self-grounding. So the only thing that would come off of it would be the power wire, the dump wire that activates the dump. So, alright, well, let's go over my wiring block here. So we got our 24 volt power wire for the switches to work. We got the front up. We got the front left and front right since we have two dumps on the front pump. Then we got the back right up switch up. We got the back left dump, back right up switch up, and back right dump. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the power wire first for the switches because they require 24 volts to work. Okay, so you'll find your 24 volt battery first, and remember, depending where you put your ground, that battery that your ground comes off of is your first battery, which is 12 volts. Next one will be your 24 volt. So this one's 24. So you're going to want to run a wire from this terminal as it connects to the other ones. You're going to want one wire from this terminal to your wiring block. Oops. All right. And in between, you want to have a fuse. I don't know what a fuse looks like as an electrician, but you want to use a fuse. I use a 25 amp fuse. I haven't had an issue with it. So make sure you have a fuse in your power line, okay, from your 24 volts for your switches. Make sure there's a fuse. I use 25 amp fuse. You can use a different one if you want. Just don't go lower than 20 or 15 or whatever. Don't go lower than 15. So now we got our power to the switches wired up. We got our solenoids hooked up right now, and they're hooked up to the pumps, right? Okay. We're running 3 pumps, 3 batteries to the rear pumps. We got them hooked up on 3 solenoids, different banks. Like I was talking about earlier, for a cleaner looking setup, run the battery off to one, and then that same cable, run it off to the other bank. So make sure that it goes off, you jump off the cable coming from the battery, okay, just like that. You don't want to drop off from this one to this bank. Don't do that. Do it this way. All right. Okay. Now, let's see. We're gonna hook up our switches. Okay. So we'll do this. Probably should have done it the other way. Alright, so we're going to work on the back left pump. So for the front left, back left, alright, we'll say it's orange. And you want to go to your S terminal right here. So on your solenoids, and on your solenoids, make sure you jump them from S terminal to another S terminal. So once you hit the switch, 24 volts goes to the switch, goes to this wire. It activates the solenoids. It'll open them up, and it'll let the current go through the solenoids to the pump, and it'll, power the motor. There's a spline key in the block connecting the motor and the gear that's in the tank, and it shoots out the oil to the cylinder. Okay, so now we got our switch up on that one hooked up. Now we're gonna do the dump wire, since it's only running on one dump for the rear pump, for one of them. you hook it up to your secondary wire that comes off of your dump. Since the dumps these days come with 2 wires. Okay. So now your back left pump is wired and ready to go. That's pretty much all it takes. So we'll go ahead and do the right back real quick. So we're coming off of the back right up. Then make sure they jump from S terminal to S terminal. Okay, that one's good. That's how you want to wire that. We'll wire the dump, and remember, this is coming already from the switches that are already wired up. Okay, so that goes to your other wire for your other dump. Okay, now we'll wire up the front. Same deal. The only thing is you got 2 dumps instead of 1 dump on the pump. Okay, we'll do the power wire first. So that's the front up. Goes down to the S terminal and it jumps. Okay. Alright, so now that's ready to go. When you hit the switch, the blue wire activates the solenoids and lets the power through. Okay. Now we do the dumps. What color have I? Okay, there we go. Go the front left dump to that one, to that dump. And then the front right dump. There we go. Now it's hooked up to the other dump. So now your whole entire setup is already wired. And remember, this is going off of what you've already have wired up with your switches. I know when newbies, when you guys go off of when you're trying to wire up your setups, you'll go online and you'll see those diagrams. It'll be like circles that have letters in it. That's gonna confuse the hell out of you guys. If you're buying pre-wired switches, then you don't need to worry about looking up diagrams. All you need to do is this in the trunk. Wire up the wires coming from the switches to a wiring block, and then from your wiring block, split it off to where they need to go, to your bank solenoids, or to your dumps or your power switch, the 24-volt power. Okay, it's hooked up. We got the power right there. Okay. Hopefully this makes sense so far. Okay. All right. Let's see. So remember, you guys, you can run 1 dump for the front. All we will need to do is just take away 1 dump, and that's it. And then you got, 2 hoses or a Y block coming off of your dump. Depending how you have your setup plumbed, you can plumb it differently than anybody. There's different ways it can be plumbed for faster flow, or just plumbed differently for what you want your setup to do, So hopefully this part makes sense. So let me go ahead and kind of erase this real quick. Somebody did ask, what if I'm gonna take away 1 pump from my 3-pump setup? So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So right now we're gonna pretend we're taking away this pump, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna add a second dump to this pump right here. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. Eliminate one of the rear pumps. Alright, so in this scenario, we already removed one of the rear pumps. Alright, since you're going to do that, you're going to want to add a dump to your other pump. So you have 2 dumps. Okay, If you don't want to have two dumps so that you can move, you can go down unevenly in the rear. And if you don't care, then you can just run a Y block from your dump to your both rear cylinders, depending what you want to do. Okay, if you're that basic kind of guy that just runs front and back, then you can do it off of one dump. All right. So in this scenario, we removed the third pump and we added the second dump to the back pump that was for the back left, but now it's just pure back. So, alright, so we'll go ahead and finish rewiring at this point. So at this point, you pretty much took off the solenoids here. You took off the wire jumping to the other bank. You took off the wires, removed the wire powering the switches, the solenoids here, like you see here. So remove this side. So now what we have to do, the wire that was coming off the wiring block for this pump, the dump, now we have to run it to that dump for that pump. Okay, and that one was, we'll just say that it was the black wire. How about that? Something simple. So now the back right dump gets connected there. Simple as that. That's all you gotta do. You know, you'll just have to replumb your back pump, depending what you want to do, and connect a wire to it. Simple as that. That's all you gotta do. And when you gotta take off a pump, you know, and this goes for if you're taking off a pump from a four pump setup or a 3-pump setup. So simple as that. That wire is connected. It's just my hand kind of erased it. But hopefully this makes sense to you guys. Alright. That's all you gotta do in removing a pump. You know, move a dump over if you want, depending on what you want to do on your setup. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys. If it doesn't, then I'm doing something wrong. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. Email me or DM me on Instagram. You can check it out right there. Alright. So, let me go ahead and erase all these wires. And we're going to pretend like we're wiring up a 4-pump setup. It's super simple on the 4-pump setup. Alright. Be right back. Okay, so I drew up the 4-pump setup, 1 dump per pump. Okay, so I got the front 2 pumps hooked up on 10 batteries. The back pumps are still hooked up to just 3 batteries. Individual banks right there, individual banks for the front and individual for the back. Okay, and going off of my thing, jumping one wire to the other, as long as it's off of the battery cable. Not the cable going to the pump from the solenoids, okay? So I went ahead and just jumped it as well to the other bank for the front from the battery cable coming from the battery. Okay? So we got our wiring block up there, alright? And however you have your switches wired, it doesn't matter, okay? As long as you have your battery cables indicated. And remember, you guys can come up with your own color code. You don't have to follow my color code. You can create your own. This way it'll be more easier. Okay, so I went ahead, the way I wired the block, I wired from left to right on the pump scenario. Okay, so it can make easier to see what I'm doing instead of crisscrossing cables like I was doing a little bit ago. But hopefully that didn't confuse anybody. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead. Let's wire up all the solenoid banks for each pump. So up here we got a 24-volt wire. We got our back left pump. Back left means up. Back left dump. Back right up. Back right dump, and so on and so forth. Okay. So here we already have our solenoid switched up, and that's our up switch. So this is our up switch for our pump for back left, and there we go. Now we can hit the up switch and it'll work on that one. Let's go ahead and hook up our power wire for the switches. Goes to our 25 amp fuse. Alright, and it goes to our 24 volt battery, second battery from the ground. Okay, make sure you guys have quick disconnects on your setups. There's some people that I've seen that literally hooked up their batteries straight to the ground, and your batteries are always hooked up. That's dangerous. All right, don't do that. All right, we'll do the back right. Okay, see our back right. We'll make it green. So let's hook up each solenoid together. It'll go off. Oh, now we're crisscrossing cables. Alright, so I went to our back right switch up. Okay. Now we're going to do the front left. Hook up each solenoid on the S terminal. There we go to the wiring block. Left up. Front left up. And then we'll do the front right. Hook them all up. And there we go. Now we got every single pump hooked up so that they can raise up the car. So all we got to do now is just the dumps. So we'll go ahead and hook up the dumps. It's super simple, one wire per dump. So we'll come off of the dump, the second wire from the dump that is given to you, and just hook it up to the dump wire. Okay, do it for the back right dump. There we go, back right dump. Front left dump. There we go, hooked up. Last but not least, the front right dump. There we go. Now we got it all hooked up. Now the entire trunk is hooked up. Now we can hit the streets and do whatever we want. Hopefully this makes sense. So this is how you wire up your trunk, coming up after the wiring block, okay? Coming from your switches. Alright. On what you want your setup to do, if you want side to side, front to back, seesaw, or whatever, pancake, that to wire all that all indicates on how good you wire your switches. Alright, your switches tells your setup what to do. Alright, so that's where you gotta color code. You gotta know what you want to do. Gotta know what you want to do. Yeah, you guys get what I'm saying. Alright, so hopefully this helps you guys out. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it makes sense to you on removing pumps, wiring pumps for four pump setup, for different types of looking battery setups, individual banks, multiple banks, or in jumping off one to the other. And remember what I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter if you go left to right or right to left. It really doesn't matter. So you guys can tell the switch, the wire for the solenoids, the wire for the solenoids to the pumps from the batteries. It doesn't matter if you go from left to right or if you come off the middle, for the wire. It doesn't matter. It'll still activate the dumps to open up to let the current go through to your pump. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. Remember everybody, you can create your own color code. That what makes the setup wiring easy. If you end up buying a car already switched up and you know nothing about the hydros, I recommend if you have time, rewire it. Come up with your own color code, and by the time you're done wiring, you'll know what wire goes to where, what switch does what, and stuff like that. you'll be proud of yourself. So hopefully this video has helped you guys out tremendously. I hope it does, because I've been getting a lot of these questions on how to wire up these pumps. You know, and doing the plumbing side of the pumps, that's all how you want it to do, or how do you want it to look. If you're plumbing for flow, or if you're plumbing just because you want a basic setup, well, it depends what you want to do. I'll go ahead and drop that here right now. So let me just clear this up. All right. Remember, if you guys have any questions, hit me up on Instagram, or hit me or send me an email. Okay. Be right back. All right. So I drew up some examples of how to do your plumbing. All right. So this plumbing right here, this right here is the block. Right, this right here, you got your block. All right, here's your T-fitting, and here is your 2 check valves leading up to your 2 dumps right here. And then here you got your side, the fittings on the side that go to your cylinders. And behind the dumps, there'll be another fitting that would be your return to go back into the block. Okay, so this is a basic two dump assembly setup for a pump. Alright, and the other more common setup for a single dump setup on the pump. So here we got your block again. You got your check valve coming out of the block, and the flow would go up the up through the dump and out to the cylinder. And when you hit your dump, fluid comes back through the dump, through the back fitting, and back into the block. Alright, you got your check valve. Your slow down valve will be on the other side of this fitting, your return port. Same with this one. You know, since I'm not drawing in 3D, your return, your slow down valve would be on the other port. Okay. Right now we're talking about mainly on how stuff flows out and how the usual plumbing that people usually do. Okay. So, in these two, there's flow going through the dump, so there's kind of a restriction. The flow is being restricted a little bit. Okay. So now we will go ahead and go to the flow where the flow doesn't go through the dump to get to the solenoids. Solenoids to the cylinders. All right, you got your block again. You got your 90 elbow fitting. You'll have your check valve, and it goes into a Y block splitting off to your cylinders. Okay. That's a top view. So here's a side view of the same deal. All right, side view. So you got your 2 hoses coming off of the Y block, going to the front. You don't have to have a Y block if you're one of those guys that want to run one hose up to the front, and then once it's in the engine bay, then run it off into a Y block. That's totally up to you. I like to run 2 hoses from the back to the front. That's just me. But plumbing it this way, the flow is not going through the dump getting restricted. It's flowing straight out of the block into the cylinders. Hopefully that makes sense. And then since you got your check valve here, the fluid stops here, and when you hit the dump, opens up, flow goes back into the pump through the return port. So hopefully that makes sense. That's another way. So pretty much I drew up 3 different ways on how to do your pump assemblies, your dump assemblies. So the single dump, 2 dump assembly, and then your faster flow assembly. Hopefully my drawings make sense. I'm not very artistic when it comes to drawing, trying to explain something. So, alright, well that's it for the video. Hopefully this last part made sense on how to do faster plumbing without any restriction in the way. Alright everybody. Next video would be finishing up the Skylark. So, getting that thing out of here, and I think we're going to be working on a 86 or 85 Regal in the next couple weeks after the Skylark gets out. Alright everybody. Peace. Don't forget guys, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. If you follow me, I'll follow you back. If you remember, if you have any questions, hit me up here on Instagram, DM me. Don't be shy to say what's up. Don't be shy if you have any questions, no matter how dumb they might be. They're not dumb. I'm here to help teach you guys. Yeah, and don't forget, guys, I have a P.O. box. If you guys want to hook me up with whatever, want to give me stickers, just ship them to this address right here. Alright, and then don't forget, I got the Lolos and more stickers for $3, and if you want more, cut you a deal. I began working on some merch. I'll show you guys here a picture on the next coming video. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Like, comment, and subscribe.